Now, I'm assuming you're here because you have a dog that is reactive and that reactivity feels really unpredictable. They're reactive towards some dogs and not towards others. And it looks like that aggression. So we're going to start off by looking at where that aggressive looking behaviour comes from, and then we'll have a look at why is it so selective with some dogs. So there's a bit of our dog's brain, like a little circuit, and if we switch that circuit on, we see aggressive behaviour. Now, that bit of the brain, actually, this is really relevant for lots of different animals. That bit of the brain is really, really ancient. It's your dog just going into that survival mode. You've probably heard of fight, flight, or fight, flight, freeze, fool around, or what. There's all sorts of different iterations of that. But it's all about your dog going deep into that ancient bit of the brain saying, I just need to survive here. But our dogs, they're a social species. Before we domesticated them, their ancestors lived in family groups. And since we've domesticated them, there have been hundreds and hundreds of generations of selective breeding to create the dogs that do particular tasks and can live with us. So actually, switching that circuit on isn't that easy. Our dogs generally are geared towards resolving conflict. So you don't need to stress so much about, am I doing something that's switching that on? Because that's kind of not the point. Yes, that circuit does get switched on, but it's not, there's a combination of factors that are going on. So let's think about the bucket analogy that I talk about a lot if you've heard me speak before. So everything that's happening to our dogs is filling the bucket. Good things, bad things. Some of them fill it a lot, so things like pain, super scary things, but little things fill it a little bit as well, like, I don't know, for some dogs a bird flying past or a leaf blowing or a car door or anything. And that bucket filling is the thing that can switch on that circuit. So when that bucket overflows, that circuit's going to go on. So the bucket's just an analogy for chemicals in the brain like serotonin, dopamine, cortisol, that kind of thing. And there have been studies that have been done where they've taken blood from dogs and found that in dogs that were aggressive or showing aggression, their blood cortisol was significantly higher than those that weren't, and that their serotonin levels were significantly lower than those that weren't. So we know there's this chemical reason that this circuit is being switched on. That's what's responsible for it. Now, we know that with some dogs, switching on that circuit is harder than for others. And there's, again, several different reasons. So the first one is the genetics. If you have a dog and their parents are showing fearfulness or aggression, or one of the parents is showing it, then the puppies are far more likely to. It's simple to that, really. There's loads of different, bits of research that's gone onto this. So, I've always thought that we should be really looking at breeding our dogs for temperament and for health rather than for looks. But that's a totally other story, really. The second one is their previous experience, so particularly traumatic experience, and that can increase the reactive response of our dogs to others, and it does impact all their future reactions. Health problems, massive. So I know that when I'm in pain or I'm not feeling very well, I'm particularly grumpy and everyone just needs to stay away. For some people, they're comfortable with some people coming close and not others. For some of us, it's just everybody go away. And actually, there's also that kind of natural thing, isn't there? The same as there is with us. Some of us are just more sociable than others, and that's okay. And it's the same with our dogs. Another one is lack of, or, and this is important, inappropriate socialization. So dogs know how to interact with other dogs. Okay, that's something, to think that we need to teach them how to do that, it seems a bit silly, really, doesn't it? But, and this is the crucial bit, lack of experience with novel dogs, so dogs they haven't seen before, and novel experiences, so things they haven't seen before, can mean to our dogs that new stuff, particularly new dogs, can be super scary. Now, The inappropriate socialization, what I mean by that is that all too often it's people think it just means having that unrestricted play with as many dogs as possible. And what can happen there is, well, all too often it does happen, is that these unrestricted sessions can lead to bad experience. So there we're going back to that previous experience bit. And then the other thing is the cues that they're getting from the other dog or the person that's with that other dog. Now, our dogs communicate. Their communication is really complex and can be really subtle. But they are fantastic at reading each other's faces and bodies and human faces as well. So they can pick up if the other dog's feeling a little bit stressed out and anxious or aggressive or whatever else. So that's kind of an overview of reactivity in general. So I better really get on with it and actually answer the question, hadn't I? So let's think about that bucket, that circuit in the brain that needs switching on. So you go on a walk, there are things that are happening on that walk all the time. So, and these experiences are adding up. And actually, these things can be filling the bucket. Things can be filling the bucket from, as much as a few days ago that will impact how our dog reacts now. So there are little things, they're filling up, bits filling up the bucket. You see another dog, bit goes in the bucket. The dog hears a loud motorbike, it fills up a bit of the bucket. They see a squirrel, it fills up a bit of the bucket. So all the time, the bucket is filling and filling and filling, and then you see the next dog, and that is just enough for that bucket to overflow. Pow! The circuit gets switched on, and you get the reactive behaviour. So that's one reason, and that reason is really important. The second thing to consider is looking at our dog's prior experiences. So we know that our dogs can recognise each other's faces, and their bodies and general things about other dogs. So let's say that your dog had a bad experience with a big, white, fluffy dog. What that can mean is that in the future, your dog could see a big, white, fluffy dog, and that can then be massively bucket filling and cause that circuit to be switched on, that reactivity. It could just be a big dog or a white dog or a fluffy dog. And that could then, trigger those past experiences, which is bucket filling. And then thirdly, we need to think about the cues that they're getting from the other dog, or it could be the lack of cues. So for instance, black dogs or short-faced dogs, they can be quite difficult for other dogs to read as their facial expressions tend to be less clear. Or it could be a cue from another dog that is shouting back off because they're really fearful or whatever. So that is going to be massively bucket filling for our dogs. Now, what if your dog is only reactive to one particular dog? So it could be a previous bad experience. It could be that this dog just has given back off cues in the past or consistently gives back off cues. And we know that our dogs can recognise individual other dogs. So they'll see that other dog, they'll know who it is. It can even be from a distance. That dog can be looking super relaxed, but they'll know from their previous experience what's happened before. So they kind of get their defence in early. Now, what are we going to do about it? Okay, so the first thing we need to do is manage the dog's bucket. I think it's pretty clear that that's absolutely key. We can control what goes into it. We can work on making it bigger, and we can make sure there's a big old hole in the bucket so our new dog knows how to calm more quickly. Tip 2 is working on growing your dog's confidence so that they see new experiences as being unthreatening. Make sure that the experiences they are having are varied and positive. Just remember that if they have a negative experiences, you need a heck of a lot of positive experiences to counter that out. So avoid putting them in fearful situations like the plague. And then the third tip is learn about dog body language, because not only will you be able to look at your dog and see exactly what's happening with their bucket, where they're at, but you will also be able to read other dogs and then understand, how your dog is going to react to them. So I've put a link down in the description for you with where you can get some resources to learn about dog body language. And you can sign up to www.barkinguptherighttree, all the words have got dashes in between.com. I'll put a link in the description because it's too hard. Or if you go to the page, there's a link there to Barking Up the Right Tree. Loads of advice for owners for reactive dogs there. So I hope this was super useful. Do feel free to leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button to get more tips and information to help you and your dog.